Charles Barber, who is a farmer, we'll just say supplement and nutritious substance seller. You've wandered the world to find some of the best nutritional foods and superfoods for people, and that's what you do is you help produce those and help share those around the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about kind of your journey.
Yeah, it's kind of elusive, right? So ideally, I got started in horticulture, into farming. That was kind of I went to school for biochemistry and horticulture, so I knew I wanted to farm. My grandpa was a farmer. But what kind of happened is I got into self development, got real big into prayer, meditation, and I had this kind of epiphany that, after reading some books, that it was all about minerals, and I knew the food we were eating didn't have minerals. So that led me on this search for these superfoods, if you will, because it was all about finding those minerals, the minerals back in our food. And medicinal mushrooms were a big part of that. And I started a company called Crucial 4 because there's 4 different types of foods. One of those is medicinal mushrooms. But I was always interested in agriculture. During my travels back, my spot back home that I had at the time, we always had a garden in the backyard. And it wasn't until this last year that I actually purchased a property, much like you did, Michael, and really started to grow food. But my whole premise behind all this was food is medicine, right? And I felt like all the food I'd been eating my whole life had just been devoid of nutrition. And again, that's what led me to the superfood world. But in my whole journey, I've learned about manufacturing of these foods and herbs, which was huge wake up call for me. Learned a lot about just soil science and like what to look for in an environment, like what makes something healthy and whatnot. And yeah, and then obviously I got connected with Dan Kittredge, which I know you know him, and I'm kind of like leading a thing down here in Texas with another guy, and we're really trying to get that meter developed down here. So yeah, we're growing a lot of superfoods and super herbs on my farm. That's ultimately what I wanted to do. I wanted a superfood farm. My goal and mission is to create these farms all over the world. I really want to shake up the food system, and it wasn't until I met Dan that I actually started growing market garden vegetables. He was like, "Grow super lettuce, man."
Yeah,
I'll leave it heirloom, man. I'm not going to grow these hybrids. But then I've learned things about that maybe someone's got to grow a hybrid if you actually want it to grow. So
yeah.
And that's you that's taught me that as well.
So talk to us, Charles, about your journey with mushrooms, because again, you started doing these superfoods and you've wandered the world. I mean, you showed pictures of being like in the middle of the jungles and all these different places. So talk to us about how you got involved with mushrooms and why mushrooms are so important for us.
Mushrooms were something that when you start to look at herbalism and the Taoist system, the Vedic system, the shamanic system in South America, mushrooms are there. They've been studied for over 6,000 years, recorded. So, and then we look at things like Sumerian tablets. We see that they had mushrooms. Like, whoa. We see that there's even claims that most religions were based on this mushrooms. And so the history and lore is really what got me like, whoa, something's here. And in the fact that every single herbal system in the world, it was a big part of their system, that mushrooms, in particular medicinal mushrooms. So let me clarify that. It wasn't just mushrooms. It was medicinal mushrooms, which are mushrooms that grow pretty off trees. And there's a few that don't, like the cordyceps.
Yep.
But yeah, that's what really got me involved in it, was just as an herbalist looking at all these different herbal sectors. I just saw that mushrooms were almost like a key point or a piece of that puzzle. So I had to learn about it, and then the lore and the history just was like blew me away. And as a holistic practitioner, because I have a wellness center and a clinic and do a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, I was always faced with people that had autoimmune conditions.
Yes.
And it was a struggle as an herbalist, because if you go the traditional herbal route, you work with what's called inferior herbs. And inferior herbs boost your immune system or they'll lower your immune system. But if someone has an autonomic response in their immune system to a substance, which is actually usually not a foreign substance, it's a domestic substance in the body. That's why it's autonomic. It's attacking itself. You can't use a lot of those inferior herbs. But mushrooms were safe. They were considered modulators. They modulated the body's response to stress instead of stimulating it. And that to me was it. When I found that out, when I started taking them for myself, my mom, I have a history with my mom and cancer. She obviously used a lot of mushrooms to help her healing. And so, not just theoretical and like reading things, I actually saw this work, and I've seen it work over the last decade, over and over and over again. So that's really what got me involved and why I'm actually growing them now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of mushrooms do you grow? Talk about that.
So right now, we're going to grow all medicinals. That's our goal, to grow.
Yeah.
We source all medicinals. What we grow right now today is the cordyceps. And the reason why I decided to focus on the cordyceps is because it actually grows different than like reishi and shiitake and all these other ones. Mm. However, I get really good wild mushrooms from around the world, and I found that those are way more powerful than most of the stuff that I got that was grown. So I have a really good supply chain there of that. But with the cordyceps, I didn't, and I never did. And it was either get the wild ones that aren't really affordable for anyone, or you go and get mycelium. Because for years, no one knew how to fruit cordyceps. And the people that do know how to fruit cordyceps, which in the last 5 years, this just started happening in Asia, they're sterile. So they can't reproduce. And no one knows this. But if you go right now to the store to buy a cordyceps mushroom, more than likely you're going to get a cordyceps mushroom that's just mycelium. And this kind of goes into the industry standard of the difference between China and the U.S. Because you've got people saying that the mycelium is where it's at, and you've got other people saying, no, that's not where it's at. It's just the fruiting bodies. And here I am in the middle trying to decipher the hieroglyphs of this.
Yeah.
It's nuts. So we focus mainly on cordyceps right now. Well, I'm really a stickler on how they're grown. I've had people reach out to me that say, hey, let me grow your mushrooms for you. And I'm like, I can't do that because how are you growing it? What are you using in your substrate? We have to understand that mushrooms are remediators. They are cleaning things up. So anything you put in that substrate, it's going to suck up. So if you're using soy, you're using the master blend that everyone uses. Or if you're using something like that straw that could be sprayed with chemicals, the likelihood that those chemicals are going to get into that fruiting body and that mycelium are highly likely because that's what they do. They remediate things. So we focus mainly on cordyceps. I could go into a little bit. We use the chicken's eggs. So I use the shell and the egg yolks. I feed them the mycelium. So their diet is filled with the mycelium. I also use things like nutritional yeast. I use spirulina, glacial rock dust. That's what I use in my cordyceps mushroom mix that I don't see anyone using. But again, for me, I'm not trying to produce a massive amount of cordyceps. I have a very niche market. I have a very niche clientele. They're part of my community, and they want the highest of the highest, la creme de la creme, and so do I. And as you know, I've sent you products. You've experienced that. And so that's where I'm at. So I'm kind of in a niche in that, So basically, for us, we're going to start with cordyceps. We're going to merge into growing the reishi, and we're going to probably be growing lion's mane. I'm probably never going to grow chaga, and I'll explain why. But really just focusing on those few is really what we're all going to be growing. But I'm not going to build those out till probably next year. And obviously growing those completely 100% organic with organic substrates and all that jazz. But, I would like to just kind of lead into medicinal mushroom facts for everybody. And in that way, people can kind of get an idea of what I've already kind of hinted on here and there. So just some notes that I have here. Medicinal mushrooms been recorded 6,000 years. Wow. Recorded use, history, lore, benefits, amazing. And that's what's been written down. So we can go into the path. I went into that a little bit. They modulate the immune system. They reduce inflammation. They support every system of the body. There's not one system they don't support, and to understand what is inside medicinal mushrooms is doing this is all medicinal mushrooms are very similar in that they have a lot of the same compounds, but then they're also very unique in that some of these compounds are only found within themselves. And this is where things get interesting, and I really wanted to educate everyone on because it blew me away. I thought they were all the same because every medicinal mushroom has a beta-glucan, okay? And that is inside the polysaccharide. And you don't have to remember this stuff, but just think mini saccharide sugar, long chain sugar. Inside that are these beta-glucans, okay? Now, every single mushroom has these beta-glucans and these polysaccharides, but some of these have very unique types of compounds inside of them outside of that, known as triterpenes. And many of these mushrooms have triterpenes that are very unique to themselves. But on top of these unique, rare, missing nutrients, crucial for missing food groups, right? That's why I called it that. You have basic nutrition. You have vitamins. You have minerals. You have vitamin D. You have phosphorus, potassium, copper, selenium, protein inside these mushrooms. So this is something that is a true food and a medicine. It has medicinal compounds and it has food compounds. Okay. And that's what I love, because when you start to look at the research and how they were used, okay, they were used in cuisines. They cooked with these medicinal mushrooms. You know, my wife's Lao, and we would make pho. We're always throwing Rishi mushroom in there. We're eating that. And that is traditionally how they've been used. However, there's been a trajectory and change in the industry standard that I could just segue right into, Michael, if you'd like me to.
Yeah.
So this is something that not a lot of people know, because the standard is different in China than it is in the U.S. And here's kind of where it's at. So right now in China, they have studied these things way longer than us. Like we're catching on. If you go to these summits in China, these mushroom things they do, holy moly, the stuff they're doing with this stuff, it's mind-boggling. So, and all the history and all the lore, a lot of it comes from Southeast Asia, okay, and the Vedic system. A lot of their standards are saying you only want to use the fruiting bodies or the spores from those fruiting bodies. Those are what have the most concentration of these medicinal compounds, triterpenes, beta-glucans, polysaccharides, etc., etc. But with that being said, it is Southeast Asia. There is companies that go under and do things that are kind of shady. The raw materials they use, a lot of synthetic compounds, a lot of soy isolated compounds, a lot of things that I am totally against. But then there are also some good manufacturers over there that are like growing Rishi on wood. You know, one of the species of Rishi is known as Don wood because it grows on wood. And they say that most of these medicinal mushrooms all come from trees. So naturally, that's what nature's doing. So they've mimicked that. However, there are people that don't do that over there. And part of why I'm growing my own and starting my own, because you never know what you get over there. If anyone's ever worked with the Chinese, I'm not against them. My wife's Asian, but they will rip you off. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars, thrown product in the trash, got it retested. It's a trip. I'll just leave it at that. However, in America, everyone knows Paul Stamets. If you know anything about mushrooms, he swears by not the fruiting bodies, but the mycelium. And this is interesting because he has all these patents on it. He has like all this hardcore evidence on it. But everyone in China is saying, no bueno, this is not where the magic's at. Now, where am I as in the scale of this whole deal? Is I'm a little indifferent still. I do believe that the fruiting bodies have more power and are more potent in those medicinal compounds than the mycelium. However, I feel like the mycelium can be definitely used in environmental cleanups, but maybe not so much for human benefit, nutrition. And again, Paul Stamets has a lot of products on the market. He has a turkey tail product. He talks a lot about his mom with breast cancer and turkey tail. However, one thing he misses and that people miss is that the product that he sells isn't the product his mom took. And when you look at the amount you need to take of mycelium versus fruiting body, it's almost 10x in the amount you need to consume.
Okay.
Also, none of the history and lore talks about mycelium, because in nature, if you see a Rishi mushroom growing out of a tree, you can't get to the mycelium. You can't get to it. Like, it's all covered in tree bark. What are you gonna do? Eat the tree? No, no. You pick it off and you eat the mushroom, and then you don't just eat it raw, but you process it, which I'm gonna go into that. Yeah, but that's kind of where the standards are a little different. There's a lot of people, like, we get a mushroom powder product that uses both the fruiting body and the mycelium. Because of that product is grown here in the States. A lot of the people in China are saying also that the mycelium is grown on grain, that the grain has beta-glucans inside of it. So when you go to test the mycelium, you're really just getting the beta-glucan content of the grain. And that is true unless you're testing for the right type of beta-glucans. So if a company just says loaded with beta-glucans, they're probably just, it's probably a lot of filler. Yeah. But if they identify the right beta-glucans, I think it's 1 and 6, those are actually the active compounds that are in the fruiting bodies and the mycelium. So if you're seeing that, then you know that they're actually testing their product right, and that a lot of that hearsay you hear, which is really from one big major company that sources mushrooms from China. They're actually a Canadian company. Yeah. And I know them really well, and I've worked with them in the past. And I just didn't like their approach, so I don't source from them. But again, I hope this helps demystify a little bit, or more so just educate. Yeah. The end of the day, we don't know much. Yeah. And I'm gonna go, when I go into these compounds, when I talk about each one of these individual mushrooms, you're gonna see why. And I'll just allude to it right quick. We name a lot of these specialty compounds after the mushroom themselves. So that means we really don't know what it is. We just know that it's in that one mushroom, and we haven't found it anywhere else in the world. Yeah, to me that's fascinating, because it's like this one mushroom only has this one thing. But it also tells me we really don't know what that one thing really is. We just identified it. Yeah. That's like where the cosmic giggle comes in, and you're just like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah.
All right, so to summarize on that, you're saying that when people are compounding these mushroom supplements or tinctures or whatever they're making from these mushrooms, that they're doing not only the fruiting bodies, but they're doing mycelium. But the mycelium, you have to take 10 times as much in some cases to get the same benefit. And in history, people never really ate the mycelium because you really couldn't. Thinking about when you're putting this together is, does it really have a lot of the fruiting body, which is where a lot of the effect is going to come from?
Exactly, yeah. And, whether or not you have to hit 10x, don't quote me on those numbers, because at the end of the day, when you take a wild genetic and you bring it in and you cultivate it and create this cultivar or a commercial strand, you really dilute the potency. And so that's what's happening with all mycelium. No one's eating wild mycelium. However, people ate wild fruiting bodies. And so I am big on wild herbs. Obviously, you had the products. We focus on wild herbs. And anything I grow, I get from the wild genetics and bring those straight in the farm, and failed miserably with those wild genetics. And it's a big pain in the butt. And that's why I went into the heirloom and kind of alluded to the hybrid. You want to grow hybrid. Anyways, so that's food for thought on that notion. Yeah, you're probably going to have to eat more of the mycelium, but you probably would have to eat more of that fruiting body too, because it's being cultivated and it's not wild. So I don't want to bash mycelium. I just want to educate people and understand that those really are two different scenarios because of the standards. And the standard right now across the board is you either have organic or non-organic substrate. And so if you're going to grow these mushrooms, and we know that they're remediators and they're bringing things in, I want to be extremely careful of those raw materials. Yeah. I also want to give the mushrooms nutrition and not just grow them on nothing. I see a lot of guys trying to get spent grain from breweries and they have success with it. It's spent. All the nutrition's out of it. We want these mushrooms to have nutrition. So maybe this is why we're seeing weaker mushrooms in the agricultural movement, just like we see with weak food in the agricultural movement, which is why we got to start growing our food ourselves. Yes. And doing things right and teaming up with people like Dan and really testing our stuff. And then But a lot of people don't want to hear it. A lot of people are like, look, I got to make money and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. But in order for us to truly change the food system, we have to make the food cheaper and more nutritious. And that can be done. And that can be done with, and I'm not going to go into that because we're talking about mushrooms, but you know that can be done.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the different medicinals out there. What of the, there's thousands and thousands of mushrooms out there, but give us like the top 5, top 6 medicinal mushrooms and what are they used for?
So I truly believe there's about 14 top ones, but the creme of the creme is going to be chaga, reishi, cordyceps, lion's mane, turkey tail, agaricus. I could keep going, miyatake, shiitake. I'm putting those lower down. But those, and let's look what's trending right now, right? Everyone's on lion's mane. Everyone's known about reishi. I mean, there's been multi-level marketing companies develop products with reishi, and again, chaga. So chaga, lion's mane, reishi, and cordyceps. Those are really the top, and that's what we focus on. Now, we have a 14 medicinal mushroom product in our breakfast shake that we sell, which has all of the medicinal mushrooms. Those ones that I mentioned are the top, and here's the reason why. Is that they all are very unique in that they have something that the others don't. And two of those mushrooms grow completely different than the others. And so I'm going to go into that a little bit here. So, again, like when we start taking medicinal mushrooms, a lot of people get confused. Which one do I take? So a lot of people say, oh, just take them all and you get this synergy effect. Paul's big on that. I'm pretty big on that. However, if you know what you really want, you know what you need, then there is some differences. Because like cordyceps has compounds inside of it. Adesine, I believe, is what it's called. Cordycepin, excuse me. And it helps produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Sorry, I screwed that one up. But it's got cordycepin. Again, it's named after itself. Okay? And it's the only mushroom we know that can help produce ATP, which can help raise your VO2 max. What the heck does that mean? Well, it means your ability to, like, when you're working out and you're stressed out, or not when you're stressed out, when you're running, you're going, your ability for your body to hold oxygen in your blood is your VO2 max, right? Cordyceps can increase that by 15%. That's why they call it the Olympic mushroom. That's why they say the Olympians ate the mushroom, and they were long distance runners. Yeah. So they could just keep going. Rishi's not going to do that. Chaga's not going to do. No other mushroom's going to do that. And another note about cordyceps is it doesn't grow on a tree. It grows out of an insect. Yes. It's super zarny. Yes. And when you cultivate it's you grow it in vitro, so you grow completely different. However, it's the most expensive sought out mushroom in the world because not only does it help increase energy, it's an immune modulator like all the others. It has proteins and carbs and other nutrition inside of it. But it has these very unique compounds. Also has anti-cancer compounds. I mean, they've used it for HIV therapy. There's certain pharmaceutical drugs that have developed from the cordyceps mushroom. Yeah. So it grows completely different. It's got very unique compounds inside of it. It's still a medicinal mushroom, but it's also the most expensive mushroom in the world. For that reason, no one's really figured out how to cultivate it up until a few years ago. And you know that. You talked to him. And he basically was connecting with guys overseas that had already been doing it, and then they figured out, because the guys overseas in Asia, they didn't want to share with us Americans how to do it. Yeah. They import it. And in honesty, what William's done and a few other guys like Ryan, they've really blown the industry through the water because they didn't care about money. These are young kids. They're vegans. Like they're really into the spiritualness of it, and they're really into the movement of it. What they have done is they have really developed better genetics than I've ever seen in the world, because all the genetics of the cordyceps that is fruiting in Asia, it doesn't produce spores. It's sterile. It's no bueno, guys. It's like growing GMO food or a watermelon that's been genetically hybrided with clonopsopline, where it's seedless. Yeah. Right? And it's like, you're going to eat fruit that doesn't have seed. What that's going to do to your seed, right? And maybe I'm hocus pocus over here, but my first knee-jerk reaction is, no thank you, I won't keep that. But again, these guys have developed genetics from all around the world. I work with these guys. Those are genetics that I brought in. Those come from wild varieties direct. They're not commercial strands yet. We haven't developed them. And we don't know that we want to develop them. I don't. I want to keep the wild genetics coming in, and I want to keep working on that DNA sequencing. That's cordyceps.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, right? And I could go in a little bit deeper, but that's cordyceps. Gives you energy. We'll just leave it at that. Helps your immune system. The next one I want to talk about is chaga. And chaga is probably my favorite. But in itself, it grows a little different too. So it grows on a tree, though.
Yeah.
Cordyceps is the only one that doesn't. It grows on a tree, but it grows a sclerotia. So, and I've got a little book here. It doesn't grow a fruiting body like you're used to. It's actually like a growth that comes out. And this is interesting because this mushroom is actually how fire was transported back in the day. They would take this mushroom, it will hold an ember, and a traveler would put it in his bag and put stuff around it, and he could actually carry fire around the world. This is how fire got moved. Amazing. It has nothing to do with internal benefits, but history and lore. The Siberian shamanism was huge in chaga mushroom. And in Russia, they've used it with chemotherapy for the last decade, if not more, with chemotherapy because they knew how powerful it really was.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that makes chaga different is that it's a sclerotia, but inside this, it's got this black kind of skin on it, and then inside it's like this yellow-orange stuff. But that black skin has a very unique triterpene inside of it. They all have terpenes, but this one is called beta-lunic acid. And they've shown that this can actually shrink tumor cells. So it's acidic, just kind of like the tumor is, and it can actually kind of melt or break down that layer of a tumor. Anyone's worked with people with cancer, and when you start to work with tumors, they have like this hard shell, and you're trying to get inside there. How do you get in there? And you can't. The body, it's like calcified, right? It's like a hard shell. Well, the beta-lunic acid can get in there. Chaga mushroom is the most antioxidant-rich mushroom in the world. Food, substance in the world, hands down, antioxidants, right? It's loaded, and it's indicative of its color, that black, and then that dark yellow. And when you brew chaga tea, and you brew it right, it comes out black. Black is night, and black is an antioxidant. Antioxidants are colors. We have to understand that when you see antioxidants, like wine, right? It's like antioxidants. Well, yeah, because it's colorful and it'll stain you. Chaga will stain you, right? So that's chaga in a nutshell. There's been books, and I could go for hours on chaga, but antiviral, antimicrobial, anti-malaria, antihispanic. I mean, it just blah, 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 blah. It just goes and goes. And they used it with HIV therapy. Same with cordyceps. Same with Rishi, which I'll go into next. But yeah, chaga's the thing that I notice the most with chaga, which we get wild chaga from Canada, Maine, and Siberia. I use all three of those, and I'll go into manufacturing here in a second and what we do there. But I get that because each zone in the world has a very unique profile, not unique, has a more robust profile than the other. And some have more in this and some have more in that. Again, the remediators, the remediating environment, what's available to them. Siberia is way up high. It's unpolluted, unlike, down here in Texas. Right, where chaga doesn't grow down here. Yeah, it grows on birch trees. We can grow on some other comps, but mainly on birch trees. But the main thing I notice when I take chaga, when I take cordyceps, I get energy, I can go. When I take chaga, I feel more zen. I feel a little bit more relaxed. I always feel like my back of my brainstem just kind of melt down. Not like Rishi. Rishi is definitely more, and I'm going to explain why, because it works on a different pathway. But chaga is definitely an immune modulator. If you're worried about immune system health, get on chaga. And, if you can get the raw material and you make tea, make tea. However, you need to understand, if you're going to take it every single day, you have to scrape the black stuff off and just use the inside. But if you're going to use it for like a week and then stop taking it, you can just throw the whole thing in. So these are tonic herbs. They're meant to be taken every day, but chaga has a little bit of a different thing going on with it. And as an herbalist, you can't just take everything for face value. You got to get in there and research. That's chaga. So the next one was Rishi. And Rishi is hands down the most studied. Everyone knows about Rishi. But what a lot of people don't know, and the value I want to bring here, is that Rishi works on the same pathway as Xanax.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? And it works really strong on the liver and gallbladder meridian. So if you want to get zenned out, we call our Rishi product Tranquil because it makes you feel chill. And it's something that, again, the herb, or what they call the mushroom of immortality, right? The
Okay.
Lord, right? That's what they call it, and the history on it. And there's pictures of, there's this one guy who lived at like 253 years old. He's holding a Rishi mushroom and an astragalus root, right? And people don't believe it, but the guy didn't spill his semen and knew how to raise his chrism oil, his Christ oil within, and the dude just didn't die. Like, he lived out in the mountains and ate these wild mushrooms. It's very possible. Kind of fairy tale for some people to believe, but it is real, guys. We live in a very weird society, what we live in, right? What we truly live in. Go read the Bible. If you're into that, and it's a very magical, amazing book. And there's a lot of things in there you just can't explain. Like, Moses lived for a long time. How? So, anyways, that's Rishi in a nutshell. It really, all these mushrooms help detox us as well, but we have to understand that we're always detoxing. There is a little bit of a slow detox with these mushrooms. I wanted to kind of mention that. As far as cholesterol, blood pressure, I want to mention that. All of these mushrooms are the same in that they help stabilize, again, modulate. You can consider these adaptogens, just like you consider some herbs. They're adapting with what the body needs. What's out of balance, I'm going to put it back into balance. And that's what's so amazing. You don't have to know about the physiology of the body like I do, or astronomy and theology and all this and alchemy. You don't need to know all this stuff. Like, it's a modulator. Like, you just you need it. You got to fix what's broken.
Yeah.
So that's Rishi in a nutshell. There's a lot of research too right now about the triterpenes in Rishi. And so you're seeing a lot of products that basically collect the spores off the fruiting body, because Rishi does grow on trees. It does grow that archetypical fruiting body that we're used to seeing when we think of a mushroom. But we're finding out that before it dies, it sends out spores. And these spores have been found to be like 700 times more potent in the active constituents than the fruiting body.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And that's why we developed a product called M Tranquil, which is the Rishi spore oil that's then CO2 extracted. So we take the spores and then we CO2 extract that. So it makes it 7,000 times more potent. And that's a little gel cap. You pop that, and people with anxiety, sleep issues, that's kind of like my go-to if I'm stressed out. Like, I just cut my finger in the orchard really bad. It's healing amazing. The first thing I did is took a Rishi spore oil because of the trauma. My nervous system was my adrenaline was going. So I popped one of those, and you just feel that. So that's Rishi. Now I'm going to go to this last one, lion's mane, because I know everyone's big on lion's mane right now and they want to know about it. But lion's mane, the reason why everyone's learning about it and really wanting to learn more about it is because of basically a nerve growth factor. And guess where that's inside of? A triterpene. So again, these fundamental elements, these triterpenes, these beta-glucans, they all have them, but there's a specific one in lion's mane that helps, and it's named after the scientific name of the lion's mane, this triterpene, and they're showing that it can be amazing for brain disorders. So nerve growth factor, what does that mean? Well, we have to understand we only use a small percent of our brain, and as we squander a lot of our, we gluttonize and we squander our semen, I'm just going to say it, women do it too, we lose a lot of our brain power. So something like nerve growth factor, I think, is so prevalent right now. People want it because their brains are dead. And so when they get that activity going in the brain and things start waking up, they're like, whoa, like I can concentrate better. I can focus better. My sleep's better. At the same token, you hear people talk about nerve growth factor and how the memory and focus for lion's mane. At the same token, you see people talking about how they sleep better. Dave Asprey talks about how he doesn't ever talk about BNF for lion's mane. He talks about how it helps him sleep. And like for me, it's like if I want sleep, I'm gonna go with Rishi.
Yeah.
But my whole point to this, guys, is that like these mushrooms, we really don't know, and they're all amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they have some uniqueness to them, but they're adaptogens. So maybe Dave's got something messed up with his sleep, and that's why he feels better and gets better sleep from it. You know? Whereas when I take it, I've got better brain focus, and I don't really notice the sleep from it because my body's dialed in that area where it's not dialed in the other. Very interesting, right? So. But the idea with lion's mane is like all cognition, right? When you see people market it, it's all about cognition. It's all about memory, recall. It's all about that nerve growth factor, which we have to understand. Our nerves are throughout our whole body. They're not just in our brain. So if anyone has issues with, mainly Alzheimer's, that's a brain thing, but it's also adrenal of the 7 endocrine systems, like your 7 chakras, but also like your fingers and your. I have a worker. And he has a lot of trouble with his feet always going numb. And this was something that he noticed a little bit of benefit from as well in his feet. So the nerves in the feet. So it helps the nervous system. It helps if there's, the fascia gets all knotted up. So you get an injury and it's like a blocked channel. Energy can't get through there. That those nerve growth factors help go in there and kind of grow around, or if something's been dead or damaged, it helps kind of invigorate it and get it to go alive. So you have electricity, you have circuits firing again. So that's lion's mane, and I'll pause there. That's those. If you want me to go into the manufacturing, that's really the last thing I had on the list, unless you've got some questions about any of that.
No, Charles, that was fabulous. That was really, really fabulous. Now, talk to us a little bit about, because I know you source these mushrooms, you take these, you produce some products with them. Talk to us a little bit about what those do, and kind of like, because I know you said like the cordyceps, you're constantly selling out of that. And how do you produce that? Is that a tincture? How does that be sold?
So in the industry, you've got kind of 2 standards. You've got the powders,
yes,
or you've got the tinctures. And, where I'm moving towards with everything that I'm growing is the tinctures. And the reason why is because of how I feel after I take them. And I'm going to stick with the 5,000-6,000 years recorded use. But the cool thing about our tinctures is that we do what's called a dual extract.
Okay.
What you have to understand when I talk about 6,000 recorded use, they were just throwing them in hot water. So we have to understand that these mushrooms have water-soluble compounds and fat-soluble compounds. Hot water gets the water-soluble. Alcohol gets the fat-soluble. With the tincture, our processing, how we manufacture, we give you both. Because we use 190 proof medical grade grape spirits in our tincture for the alcohol compounds. There's no way you could take that in the mouth. It would burn you. So you have to add water to it. And this is where a lot of the tinctures on the market are garbage, because they just cut it with water. And you see them, they're like transparent. And I should go grab one of mine to show you how thick and gelatinous ours is. Because what we do is we actually take the leftover material that most people just throw away after they soak in alcohol. We actually put that back into a pot of hot water. And then we let that simmer. We actually pressure cook that, and I let that simmer down into a syrup.
Wow.
No one's wanting to do that. It takes too long. A lot of these guys have these devices now. You can put alcohol in with your mushrooms, and then within 8 hours, you've got your extract. Well, the other thing is on our soak, we do everything based on the moon cycle, because we have to understand that every 28 days that we move through all the different 12 constellations in the zodiac. And each one of those, and I'm not trying to get all goofy over here. We have to understand that the sun moves through these constellations, and so does the moon. The sun takes a year. The moon, it takes 28 days. But it's the light that's refracting at that angle that we need to pay attention to. It's the science of a 3D electromagnetic arc magnetism. It's the same thing that resonates from your heart. It's the same thing that's resonating from the sun, which is light, from the stars, from the earth. So we're connected to that. That's how we're all interconnected. It's through that energetic wave. So by understanding that, you need to make sure, and this is alchemy that I'm kind of getting into here, you have to soak things on the new moon. So we soak it on the new moon. We pull that We do the water extraction. We simmer that down. I add a little bit of honey to preserve it because these mushrooms, a lot of them, the ones I get, they're bitter, which means they're powerful, which means they taste like crap.
Yeah.
Got a little honey to something.
Yeah.
Everyone likes that little sweetness, and honey is amazing. It's a delivery system. Sugar is a delivery system. Alcohol is a delivery system. Also, it's a preservative. It's going to preserve the product.
Yes.
So why wouldn't I use raw honey from our farm? Why wouldn't I do that? And I'm not using a lot. I'm just using a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that is our tincture product. That's how we do all of them. And it's something, again, that I am pushing myself more towards just because I'm noticing I get way better results with my clients whenever I'm using those products. And the others, the mushroom powders, I'm not. And the thing is we have to understand that mushrooms have a layer, a chitin layer. It's a cell layer. It's extremely hard for us to digest them. If you just started eating reishi mushroom, like, you would probably be farting like a pack mule. That's what my dad would say.
Yeah.
And it's like, because your body is like, can't break it down, so it ends up going from the stomach to the small intestine, and then it ferments in the large intestine and it creates gas. It's fermenting. It's gas. It's like you're farting. It's all, You can't break it down. So a lot of the powders are steam extracted, like the powders that we have, they are steam extracted, and so that cell wall is broken open, and so now you can actually consume that. Obviously, if you're going to put that into a soup, like traditionally, the hot water breaks that bond as well. Steam, hot water. Again, alchemically, you're using water and air and heat. So you're using you're using actually all four of the major alchemical elements, right? We have 4 elements. We have air, water, fire, right?
Yeah.
And so you're using all of that to break that chitin layer apart so that you can access that nutrition for yourself. But then they powder it, right? So they dry it out, and that's that. So I guess I got it all answered, right? I did it all right. Yeah. So you got the tinctures, and then you got the powders. And I just want to also say something for us out there that are watching this. I know there's a lot of farmers out there. They're going to be like, okay, I want to grow medicinal mushrooms. One thing you have to understand is I started out more in a clinical setting, in more of this kind of like working one-on-one with people. That's where I didn't start a farm initially.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, as I've grown more market veg, I've noticed that those are 2 different demographics. And the people that are wanting the tincture to travel with, it's a little bit different consumer than the one that's willing to go home and cook.
Okay.
And I'm finding that the person that's willing to go home and cook, they really just want the raw mushroom. And they want to go home and make it into a tincture. And they want to go home and because that's what they do. They're DIYers more so. Yeah. And I hope that shifts. Yeah, I really do. I hope people can understand that we need to cook more. Like you need to know. There's something magical about getting your hands dirty and working. The reason why God gave us hands, He gave us fingers and thumbs, opposable thumbs. We're supposed to work that. Physiologically, that's there for us. So I just wanted to note that, though, because that's something that kind of hit me hard, and why I've actually pushed back on growing market garden veg as much. Still growing it, but I'm not going to do 4 100-foot rows of heirloom lettuce because I just can't move it quick enough.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. I just can't. I can't move all that. I mean, I wish I could. I wish I could grow that much in microgreens and move it that quick enough. But the other thing about these mushrooms is when you make a tincture, guys, like, it's good for a few years, if not longer. They say they're good forever. If you powder a mushroom and you powder it into a powder and you dry it and you put it in the bag, you can sit on that product for a while. You don't have to turn around and move it. Yeah. All you farmers out there know that is a huge, huge stress.
Yeah.
Especially starting a farm, you got all this infrastructure going on. You're trying to just get the ground going, and then you got to turn around and sell it like that, or it rots. And then all your hard work, and then if you paid labor to get it packaged, and you're ripping open packages and throwing them back in the compost. Or I see so many farms. I saw Baker Creek, just huge farm. They do, I think, almost $1 million now a year. But I also saw a huge truck of their produce going away for donation, which I think is amazing. But in my mind, I'm thinking they probably couldn't move that product. They probably had to just give it away. And that's what I do too. If I can't move it, I'm like, hey, I go to my son's school. I'm like, hey, I got like, however many things of lettuce or whatever. It's not looking like I'm going to sell it. Just take it. You know what I mean? So just things to be thinking about. They're two different demographics. And you really have to understand your market before you just think, oh, I'm going to go grow medicinal mushrooms and everything's going to be great, because it's going to be the same fallacy you thought when you started your farm and thinking you're just going to grow all these microgreens. You watch Curtis Stone, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to grow greens and microgreens, I'm going to get rich. No, dude, like, look at where he lived, look at where he was. He's in Quebec, he's up in Canada. No one grows greens. You know how much lettuce is available up there? Yeah. I'm in Texas. You go to my farmer's market, I mean, you can grow all year here. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a greenhouse and you have a good green thumb, you can crush it all year. My tomatoes just now died in the field. Tomatoes just now.
Yes.
Just now. Like, it's nuts, right? I put them in, Taurus, March, and bloop, they just now are stopping. I mean, it's just not. Had I had a hoop cover or a greenhouse over them, I can grow all year with those. But back to mushrooms. So
yes. Well, no, Charles, that's really good advice, and I think what you're saying too is really think about how you can value add, make sure you're not, just saying, I'm going to go all in on cordyceps and grow, racks and racks and racks of them and then have all these cordyceps that you can't do anything with, or lion's mane or something. So like right now we're getting started in our production and we're looking seriously at, okay, how do we build a world-class large-scale food dehydrator, because we want to take that lion's mane and every little bit extra and grind that and turn that into a powder, because again, that's something I take every single day for my brain health. And we know that so many people are struggling. I mean, right now everyone should be taking Rishi.
Everybody. Yeah, it's so, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. This has been a fascinating kind of interview, learning about these different mushrooms and what they're useful for. And we'll link below to your website and your information so people can follow up if they want to learn more about your products.
Awesome. Thank you again, Michael. You've been a mentor to me, and I just want to say you've helped me so much, and thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
And the whole crew on the website, and there's a few of you. You know who you are. You're always on there answering everyone's questions with Michael, and you guys. I would have quit the market garden if it wasn't for you guys. I would have quit. I would have gave up. But,
all right. Well, that means a lot. So thank you.